Until last year, the civil war which brutally ripped apart the former Yugoslavia had never been far from world headlines. Now, though, an uneasy peace has settled on the fledgling nations of Croatia and Bosnia-Herzegovina, in part held together by the RAF Regiment from Leeming in North Yorkshire. Andy Clues has been out there to see firsthand the work of the regiment, not only in its role as part of the multinational force, but also how the men have taken local people to their hearts. In the first of his special reports, Andy's been out on patrol.
Every trip out for 34 Squadron, the RAF Regiment, begins in this chilling way. A reminder that the war in Bosnia-Herzegovina is over, but peace has not yet really broken out. This is a suburb of Banja Luka, once a thriving city of 143,000. Now areas like this house people kicked out of other areas of the country, victims of the shocking practice of ethnic cleansing. It's almost impossible for us to comprehend the reasons for the bloody 4-year civil war. As it ebbed and flowed across this land, Serb variously fought Croat, who fought Muslim. Some are Christian Orthodox, others are Catholic, all the victims, few are winners. The lads from Leeming regularly patrol here as part of the multinational military effort called S4, which means Stabilization Force.
What we're actually doing is conducting a process of gathering human intelligence with regards to, we patrol the local areas of Banja Luka itself, speaking to the different ethnic minorities which are located in and around the districts. What we tend to do is look how the aid agencies are actually helping them out. Whilst we've got Red Cross, International Rescue and so on, we also look at just exactly how they're receiving their aid, what support they're actually giving them as well. We look at what other government agencies from the Republic of Srpska are actually doing to help them, such as the power company, water, sewage and so on.
Away from the tangible tension of that suburb, the approaches to Banja Luka town centre seem almost normal, apart from the permanent huddle of people selling anything they can to earn money. The average weekly wage here is just £3.20. This is Banja Luka market. Now the war is over, this is the real front line. Every day, 34 Squadron from RAF Leeming patrol here, gleaning information which will help them with their future task. But perhaps more importantly, they're trying to win the hearts and the minds of these bitterly divided people. The city square, the presidential palace, centre of the effort to set up a separate Serb republic within Bosnia-Herzegovina. The war-weary old men have seen it all before. They took up arms against the Nazis more than 50 years ago.
They were our allies during the World War II. And I believe they're very fair. In the act in proper manner, we have had no problems with them. They have tried to repair the bridges, to help out the hospitals, the schools. So the population, people here really have a very good opinion of them.
English people is very good people.
We've had a fairly large aid campaign throughout North Yorkshire, which has done some sterling work. But I would be kidding the people back home if I was to say it was anything other than a drop in the ocean. And the things here in Bosnia have now got to the stage where we've really got to start backing off on pure aid, and we've got to start getting the people to help themselves.
In my next report, the soft hearts beating within the hard men of the RAF Regiment, how the lads from Leeming are laying aside their guns to bring help to a desperate people. Andy Clues, North East Tonight, Banja Luka.
Andy Clues, our man in Bosnia. Still to come in tonight's programme, the sports news with Ian Payne. And have you been fooled yet? We look at some of today's... Thanks, Nicky. Well, now for the second of our special reports from Bosnia-Herzegovina and how the lads from RAF Leeming in North Yorkshire are helping to bring about a permanent peace. Part of their role under the peace agreement signed in Dayton, Ohio last year is to provide help for local people in an attempt to bring the still bitterly divided community back together. But as Andy Clues found out, the men from 34 Squadron, the RAF Regiment, are going far beyond their brief. You may find some of the pictures in his report disturbing.
This is about as normal as you get in Bosnia. These people are receiving much-needed clothes donated by North Yorkshire in the schoolyard at Stranjani village, some miles from Banja Luka. None of the people come from this area. All were kicked out of their homes during the Civil War.
Of course, every help is very appreciated. This is going to be useful for all of the villagers.
How does he see his life improving in the next few years, 5 years?
Vidite li možda da će vam se popraviti život u narednih 5-6 godina? Da li očekujete to?
Pa teško da se popravi za narednih 6 godina, ali
we'll see any improvement in the next 6 years, but you'll have to find some way to survive.
This is what the military call a G5 project, to take aid and advice to the people. But it's more than just boxes of clothes. The RAF regiment is helping to fund repairs to the neglected school, to bring it back into use, and to employ local craftsmen.
Our job would be far simpler if we just turned up here and distributed aid and then walked away, but that would not rebuild the community. So we've got to deal with the paperwork and the coordination and so on and so forth that goes along with inventing the Stranjani village company, putting in a tender and hoping that one of the funding organisations, perhaps the Overseas Development Agency from the UK, will look on this favourably as a project that they would be happy to fund.
And here a mental hospital also takes delivery of badly needed clothes. The regiment has given 2 Bowsers to provide what we in the privileged West take for granted.
The water's very intermittent for a start, and also they get very, very frequent power cuts as well. So things like that we would class as basic, like washing, showering, and also in fact washing clothes. All these things cannot be done.
This is part of Europe, and we should look at it in that sort of way and help them to rebuild their country. I'm sure none of us want to see it deteriorating back into the war that we saw only 2 or 3 years ago, and we should do all we can to help that.
But it's not just institutions which need help. Up this muddy track live a displaced family. They're destitute and have little chance of earning a living, yet the welcome, including the fearsome local spirit Slivovic, is every bit as warm as you'd wish.
Good man!
The family that live here were displaced from their house 70 miles away. 12 people live in this building. And what the regiment's brought them today is reason enough for a party. Jivili.
It's a very humbling experience. It's difficult not to be moved by it, and I think everyone who's here today is. They are giving everything they've got to you. As you say, this is their Sunday best. This is the best they can go, and for us to be here and share it and actually make the Sunday best a little bit better, that means a lot to everyone here.
There you go.
And here a couple in their 80s who walked 70 miles through the war zone.
Thank you.
This is their lavatory, a hole in the garden surrounded by a few stalks. Their home isn't much better, little more than a condemned garage.
I would equate them with medieval conditions, quite honestly, Andrew, and it really strikes me that as far as the UK and most of Western Europe is concerned, really everyth's fairly well square in Bosnia now. But I think you and I have seen today that's far from being the case.
But this war-torn land, where everyone has a tragic story to tell, still has the ability to shock. These severely handicapped youngsters now live in a home in Split, some 150 miles from Banja Luka. In my next report, their heart-wrenching story, and the former squaddie from Sunderland who's given it all up to look after them.
Andy Clues reporting from Bosnia, and as he says, another special report from him tomorrow. Well, there's still much to come tonight, including our sports desk. For the past couple of nights, Andy Clues has been reporting from Bosnia on how the RAF regiment from Leeming is helping to rebuild the country after the civil war. But while he was there, he came across the astonishing and heartwarming story of the former soldier from Wearside who's given it all up to look after severely handicapped youngsters. They were abandoned by their carers during the war and left to fend for themselves until they were found in a pitiful state by the United Nations. Now, thanks to Geordie Foreman, their future is much brighter. You may find some of the pictures in Andy's report distressing.
This was once a beautiful country. Now that beauty is barely skin deep. It's going to be many years before anyone strolls through these meadows in safety. But this is a minefield. Between 8 and 12 million anti-personnel mines have been planted in Bosnia-Herzegovina. Few maps have been made. Some say it'll take 100 years before they're all cleared. For youngsters especially, the dangers are all too real. Here, the remains of a World War II Russian tank used in the Civil War. The red tape is a warning that it's been booby-trapped. And this was once a prosperous town, similar in size perhaps to Darlington or Consett. Now a few families cling on amid the wreckage. Once people came to Bosnia to holiday on the ski slopes. Now the lodges lie wrecked and empty, a poignant reminder of what this country has done to itself. It's impossible to pick out any one tragedy in this land of sorrow, but perhaps what happened to these severely mentally handicapped children and young adults brings home both the sadness and the hope for this country.
Once the Serbs had actually taken a lot of towns, they actually took the town of Vrlica. And within the town of Vrlica, there was 303 mentally and physically handicapped children. These children actually were left there for 7 days. A lot of the local populace fled, and these children were there, and unfortunately 2 of them died in the first 7 days of that sort of bad time. And then the children were actually casevaced down here to Split and put into 2 locations in Split Centre. Not ideal conditions at all. There's over, at least 80% of the children are actually incontinent as well, which is a major, major problem. And then, obviously, with the assistance of the UN and IFO and people like that, these children have maintained a better quality of life.
This apparent baby is in fact aged 15. And this poor soul is 25. 34 Squadron is doing its bit here, taking up some of the slack left by the local authorities who are reluctant to fund the home because it takes in all, regardless of ethnic origin. Geordie Foreman, called that even though he's from Sunderland, signed out of the army, resigned from an aid agency here, and is currently working unpaid, living off what's left of his gratuity.
So what they've actually got here is the community room. I do this because of the children and nothing else. I mean, these children are very, very sort of close to my heart. And, without my assistance, these children would just sort of like be stagnant and sort of living in accommodation, sleeping all day and that sort of thing.
He's been instrumental in raising funds to build this newer home just a few miles away, where there's no question the youngsters are benefiting hugely from the improved surroundings.
How long will you stay here?
Till the money runs out. And I haven't actually got a lot of that money left now. Obviously, I've got to wait and see. I'm hoping that, a few agencies might actually sponsor me. I don't know. I've just got to wait and see.
An important difference between the RAF regiment squadrons and perhaps similar army units is there's a considerable age difference. The average age on my squadron is about 26.5 years old. That means that I've got a higher percentage of married men than perhaps there would be in an infantry company. And so the chaps are more family men, they're more family orientated, and they have a more mature outlook by virtue of their age.
In my final report, we'll be finding out how the squadrons made a home from home in the most unlikely of places, a metal factory.
And the best of luck to Geordie Foreman and his charges. Still to come tonight, all the sports news, including Thanks a lot, Andy. And now it's time for your final report from Bosnia. And tonight it looks at what life is like out there for the servicemen from RAF Leeming. They're part of the multinational force whose job it is to stabilise the fragile peace. But while they're surrounded by a beautiful countryside and basking in a Mediterranean climate, there's little they can do to enjoy it. And matters aren't helped by their bizarre accommodation. Here's Andy's report.
This was once one of Europe's most productive metal factories. During the civil war that raged through Bosnia-Herzegovina for 4 years, munitions were made here. But now, for the 150 men from RAF Leeming and other members of the multinational force, it's home sweet home. What makes things even more uncomfortable is the stinking rubbish tip above the factory. There's been a fire burning some 80 feet underground here for at least 5 years. Most nights, when temperatures fall, the factory fills with fumes. There are people living in these metal boxes. But to get a real feel of what life is like here, we have to visit a couple of lads from the posh side of town. Senior aircraftman Mark Kearney and Corporal Harry Jinks, both from Stockton, keep in touch with the important things of life, namely how the borough's doing.
It's a bit of a shock at first, but you soon get used to it.
Oh, you seem fairly comfortable there, Harry.
Yeah, we are comfortable now. I mean, initially we were told when we come here that we're going to share a 4-man corrimec. As you can see, it's quite comfortable, what you make it, really. I mean, but you've got the mess, which is a very good mess at the moment, and just across over the back there is the Effie, which is like the bar, and you've got your showers, which are down along here, so it's not too bad, really.
Don't you get bored there, Mark?
Sometimes, yes, but I'm well into football, obviously. I like Middlesbrough, so that sort of keeps me occupied, and we're at work all the time anyway.
For the sporty, there's a gym buried away amongst the heavy machinery in the metal factory, and a football pitch where regular matches are held. But in reality, there's not much time to relax in this makeshift fortress. There are regular rehearsals for those moments everyone here hopes will never happen.
New target! 600! 3/4 left! Red roof building! Right.
Life over here is pretty good. Training facilities are quite good. Food's excellent. It's just being here. Some people start getting down days, but we're all lads together. We've got to be here. You just get on with it and just have a crack.
I think it's a case of that you make your own entertainment. The good thing about it is that we're in a close community, and if you like, I like to refer to them as my second family, which is the guys that I work with.
It's making the best of a bad job, really. We've been fairly well supported by the station with provision of video equipment, Sky TV. The accommodation's warm, and it's making the best of it.
And when it comes to a spot of exercise, there's nothing better than a walkies, military style.
It's the perimeter fence, basically, you know, it's the internal security. But we could be called to deploy outside camp if anything goes on.
During their 6-month tour in Bosnia, each man gets 2 weeks rest and recuperation back in the UK, R&R they call it, and spells of duty away from Banja Luka in the Adriatic resort of Split in Croatia. Here, life is a little more relaxed and comfortable in the old military base, which was one of Tito's retreats during his communist regime.
This looks to me idyllic. It looks like a holiday resort.
It is a bit. It's a bit like that because the security risk is they're really not existent down here. So you don't really need the manpower or to go around forcing yourself on people.
Oh, definitely. You look forward to coming here because, as I said before, here it's more relaxed. The environment's easy. You know, people are friendly here, more friendly to up there.
The only thing we don't do is patrolling, which you get the chance to go out and about at Banja Luka.
But at the back of all their minds is the chilling thought that most people are still armed to the teeth. Many houses have stashes of Kalashnikovs, even anti-tank weapons. The RAF Regiment's due to return to North Yorkshire in July, with the multinational force due to withdraw in 18 months' time.
We're not here fighting anyone. We're here keeping a lid on a pressure cooker. And that requires an awful lot of the men. They are required to show compassion in the aid projects, and they see an awful lot of sights that will affect them, not only for the rest of their service careers, but for the rest of their lives.
Bosnia-Herzegovina has been torn apart by war 3 times this century, and many more times in its long history. While, as we've seen, the RAF Regiment is doing all it can to stabilise the fragile peace, they cannot provide a permanent solution. That must come from the politicians. And whether they can achieve that when the multinational forces are due to pull out next year remains very much in doubt. Andy Clues, North East Tonight, Banja Luka.
And that completes Andy Clues' reports from Bosnia. Coming up later in the programme, a busy...